Downtown Los Angeles in the 1990s was a place known for its darkness and its danger. It was a place many people would not want to spend too much time in for fear of something bad happening to them. One of the main fears people had was being attacked, or even worse, killed. It was a constant fear for many people who lived and worked in the area. It was also something that kept happening all of the time. Day by day, more people disappeared. Nobody knew exactly what happened to them, but their bodies would eventually be found, and it was clear that a crime had taken place. One person committing such crimes was the deadly serial killer Jack Unterweger. Born as Johann but going by the name Jack, Unterweger began his crime spree not in Los Angeles but in his native home of Austria. From his earliest days, he was no stranger to the long arm of the law. His mother, who some report was a sex worker, spent time in jail for fraud before he was born. After she was arrested again when Jack was a young child, he was sent to live with his grandfather, although it was not a pleasant arrangement, as Unterweger's grandfather was an alcoholic who encouraged his young grandson to drink as well. Unterweger quickly began to get in trouble with the police at an early age. Not only did he help his grandfather steal animals from nearby farms, Jack also served short prison sentences for theft, pimping, and sexual assault. Then he began to commit even more serious crimes. He began to murder. Margaret Schaefer was only 18 years old when she was strangled to death by Jack Unterweger with her own bra. He used a special knot that allowed for the victims to be constantly revived and choked again into unconsciousness. This would happen over and over until they died, at which point he would throw their bodies into the woods. At his trial, Unterweger claimed he had seen the face of his mother in Margaret, and, angry that he was abandoned by her, that's why he killed her. The verdict of this crime led him to a life sentence in prison. So how then did Unterweger go on to become a killer so prolific that he was even dubbed the Austrian Jack the Ripper, if he was already in prison and serving a life sentence? Well, Unterweger didn't remain in prison nearly as long as most would have wanted. Before he went to prison, Unterweger could not read or write. However, he was taught these skills in prison and fell in love with the craft of writing. He spent all of his time writing, and one of the most important things he wrote was his own life story called Purgatory, or The Trip to Prison, Report of a Guilty Man. Unterweger, according to many of the literary elite of Austria, was a fantastic writer, an absolute natural. His writings were even considered to be so good they were taught in schools in Austria and performed on the radio. But it was that autobiography of his, considered his best work, that would secure his freedom. Many who read Unterweger's autobiography assumed he'd been redeemed from his past actions. They thought he was truly sorry for what he'd done and would no longer be a danger to society. A psychologist even agreed that Jack was a changed man. Speaking about Unterweger's autobiography, a historian and television host from Austria named Peter Humer said it was authentic, a real cry. Many others agreed, and eventually a campaign was launched to try and get Unterweger released from prison on the basis that he truly changed himself. The people supporting him genuinely thought he changed, and that if he were released, it would prove that people who committed crimes are able to be rehabilitated and go on to live regular, prosperous lives. Unterweger represented the great hope of intellectuals that, through the verbalization of problems, you can somehow get to grips with them. We wanted to believe him very badly, said Humer. Getting Jack released was not a very easy task to accomplish, though. The minimum sentence for Unterweger to serve was 15 years, and the president of Austria at the time refused to let him out before that time was served. However, he was in fact released after he served his 15-year sentence. It was deemed he didn't need to serve his life sentence. When he was released, the governor of the prison said, "We will never find a prisoner so well prepared for freedom." Unfortunately, what happened later would prove this all to be very incorrect. At first, things seemed to be going well for Unterweger. On the surface, that was. Jack's writing was celebrated throughout Austria. He landed a job writing for an Austrian broadcasting service called ORF, and he even spoke publicly about prisoner rehabilitation. But there was still something missing, a deeply rooted desire he desperately needed to fulfill. And then the murders began again. More women were found strangled with their own bras, in exactly the same way as poor Margaret Schaefer. In the first year he was released from prison, Unterweger killed 8 women. Nauseatingly, he even reported on his own crimes. He was so bold, he went as far as interviewing the Vienna chief of police about the murders. Unterweger once claimed that, "No theme in writing is more poetic than the death of a beautiful woman." It appeared that he thought this extended to real life too. Eventually, Jack was given a chance to go to Los Angeles to work. He was assigned to write about various elements of the downtown city of Los Angeles, including the high crime rate and the red light districts. The piece was meant to show the differences between how Americans and Europeans view prostitution, although he had already spent time investigating brothels in Prague, where he killed a Czech sex worker named Blanka Bokova. What this opportunity really did was give Unterweger a chance to find more victims. Writing about Los Angeles, he said, "Real life in LA is dominated by a tough struggle for survival, by the broken dreams of thousands who come to the city and an equal number who leave, sometimes dead." Unterweger was in Los Angeles for a total of 5 weeks. In that time, he visited many brothels and at one point even joined LA police on a ride-along. Those who met him mostly thought of him as a charming and talented reporter. It didn't seem that anything was wrong or that Unterweger was actually hiding many awful secrets. During his time in Los Angeles, Unterweger stayed at the Cecil Hotel. Those who know anything about the Cecil Hotel know it's not a place many people would stay at if they knew its dark history. The hotel has seen many murders and suicides, and was also the place where Canadian college student Elisa Lam was found mysteriously dead in one of the hotel's rooftop water tanks. If you're interested in finding out more about the dark history of the Cecil Hotel or the mysterious disappearance of Elisa Lam, check out our videos on the topics. But be warned, they aren't for the faint-hearted. It's rumored Unterweger had a very particular reason for wanting to stay at the Cecil Hotel despite its bad reputation. The place was also where the Night Stalker lived for a short time. There are not many people in the world who would consider themselves as fans of Richard Ramirez, better known to most as the Night Stalker. Ramirez was a serial killer who attacked over a dozen people in 1980s Los Angeles. His crimes were brutal and he showed no remorse for them. To those who have seen our video on the topic, you'll know that Richard Ramirez is a figure of pure evil. One person who was allegedly fascinated by him was Jack Unterweger. Staying at the Cecil Hotel also meant that Unterweger was able to easily get sex workers to agree to come with him, as the Cecil Hotel was where many of them took clients. Jack told them he wanted to interview them for the story he was writing, but really, he was intending to kill them. Unterweger would beat the women, sexually assault them, and then strangle them, as he had done to all of his prior victims. He killed 3 Los Angeles women this way until the net finally closed in around him and he was caught. While he was in Los Angeles, investigators in Austria had been on his trail. They suspected he might be behind the many recent murders of women, and authorities in the United States thought the same. It was hard to prove at first though because of the lack of any evidence at the crime scenes. Unterweger covered his tracks very carefully, except for a few hairs in the car he drove when he killed Blanka Bokova, which DNA testing proved were his and hers. These hairs were what ultimately helped convict Unterweger. Fearing capture, he fled with his girlfriend, first going to Switzerland, then to Paris, and then finally back to the United States. And it was in the United States that he was caught, and in a relatively simple way too. You see, Jack Unterweger loved the fame and the attention that came with being a celebrated author. He had been in the spotlight ever since his release from prison, and also been on TV and in magazines many times before. Therefore, when a magazine named Success said they wanted an interview with him, Jack couldn't resist. Unterweger got a nasty surprise, however, when he found out that the reporters from the magazine were actually US Marshals. He was quickly arrested and extradited to Austria to face charges. "I cannot bear going back into a cell," Jack said when he was captured, and ultimately he never would. Unterweger died by suicide on the night he was sentenced to life in prison. His lawyer said that he was a very difficult person to understand. To have a conversation with him was hard. I think he wasn't normal. Most of the people initially supported his release from prison, believing he was rehabilitated and that he expressed regret for what he'd done. Peter Humer, who was a key voice in the campaign to get Unterweger released, had this to say after Unterweger's many crimes were exposed. "At the time, I genuinely believed that Unterweger was a reformed man, but now I feel I was deceived and that I am partly to blame." What are your thoughts about Jack Unterweger and his twisted crimes? Did we miss anything important? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked this video, why not like and share it with your friends? And if you want more intriguing tales like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.